6 o'clock.
Well, it's 6 o'clock. If you could join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you all for attending. We'll get through our business. The consent items, we have the regular meeting agenda, our minutes.
Chairman, I move that we approve the regular meeting minutes of January 6th.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, action items. Voucher A, approval of $8,644.92. Voucher B, approval of $9,194.70. And voucher C, approval $87.98.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Commissioners report?
Sure. January 6th, the court meeting. January 14th, the Oyster House meeting. Hi, Lonnie. And the 29th, the auditor exit. And the 30th, the Peninsula Regional Transportation Planning Organization. That's about it.
Thank you.
Had the regular report meeting and the state auditor exit interview. That was my month.
I attended both the general and the audit exit interview, and then the executive director and I met with a representative of a camera company to see if we could get cameras out on our boat launches to do photo enforcement. We're still waiting for her review, but we think it went pretty well. Security officers report?
Travis Merrill, Port of Allyn Security. So we had a boat sinking this month, and it's fortunately not our responsibility since it's outside of our jurisdiction, but it's still an environmental hazard that is in our bay. We've tried to contact the owners multiple times to have them remove the boat or do something with it, move it, to no avail. So we had the Coast Guard out here, we had Department of Ecology out here, and they just kind of threw their hands in the air. Now you got a sunken boat. So kind of waiting from word from them for that to be dealt with. Nothing to speak of for incidents other than that. I did also attend the camera meeting, and that looked well, in my opinion, as well, for photo enforcement at both our ramps.
Has DNR been contacted
On the boat sinking?
Yeah.
I'm not aware, but I think they have. Yeah. The only people I met with were on the day after were the Coast Guard that were out here wandering around and the Department of Ecology representative.
And we haven't seen any fuel leakage or?
No. I really don't believe there was much fuel on that boat. It's been pretty much derelict out there for quite some time.
Several times today.
We've made,
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Executive Director's report?
All right, state audit. As you all mentioned, we had our exit conference with the state auditor on Thursday. She did say they want itemized receipts for credit card purchases, especially from restaurants. While I do review the reconciliation, she would like me to sign them as well. Other than those minor issues, we had a completely clean audit. Update to the comprehensive scheme. This is on the agenda for public hearing tonight, and another on adoption next Monday, because it all needs to be sent to RCO by March 1st. I sent it to you early so you all would have time to review it prior to the hearings, but it's laid out and prioritized basically as you all said you wanted it at the October 25th retreat. Update to our policies and procedures. It's the best practice recommendation that we periodically review and update all our policies and procedures, which have not been done for about 3 years. This is a major undertaking, will require some time to put together a final draft for your approval. I'd like to present the draft at our October 5th regular meeting unless I get them done sooner, which, considering the other projects we have on our plate, I don't anticipate. Budget adjustments. As you're aware, we have a number of changes to our project agendas and other things, and I recommend we do a mid-year budget review. I'd originally proposed this for the May 4th meeting and finalize any adjustments at our June 1 meeting. I'd like to revise that date to review on June 1 and adopt changes at the July meeting. It's on the agenda for discussion as well. Meeting with state representatives. Myself and the lobbyists met with Representative McEwen and Senator Sheldon on January 16th to discuss additional funding requests for the Oyster House. They echoed what the lobbyists originally told us at the meeting we had with them. There isn't any money in the supplemental budget, but not to expect any. But the meeting was more about FaceTime with them than anything else. We also met with Representative Griffey on the 27th, and the story was the same. He did ask if we had any $10,000 projects, as he may be able to get that much for us. I told him we'd find something and submit it. Yarrick Community Utilities proposal, nothing new here. We submitted a loan application to the State Department of Health to purchase the Allyn water system and are still waiting on the loan application to be approved. Security issues. As you know, we've been discussing installing high-resolution wireless remote cameras here at the park, as well as the Hood Canal Boat Launch and Marina. We want a system that'll transmit images from multiple cameras in multiple locations and store them in the cloud for any necessary law enforcement documentation. Commissioner Jackson and myself met with a potential vendor on the 15th, along with a representative from the Port of Grapeview, who may be interested as well. What we're waiting on at this point is a bid. Electrical issue. We're having a problem with the installation of the electrical equipment for the transit moorage facility. The main breaker keeps tripping and there's no load on it. The electrical contractor was out here, couldn't find any definitive problem, as it appears to be intermittent. They have a guy who lives in Mason County, and he's going to stop here every day and try different circuits, hopefully be able to isolate it. If not, it may be a faulty main breaker or ground fault circuit interrupter. What they've got to do is basically narrow it down until they can trip the breaker. WPPA meeting schedules. Next up is the spring meeting, which is May 6th to 8th at Skamania Lodge. Bias Rally is February 17th through 20th in Spokane. Renting out the small office. Nothing new to report here. Totem pole issue. James Kelsey and I are still trying to find a date that works for both of us to do this. So, would you like me to do old business here?
Sure.
Okay. Oyster House. As you know, our current part of the project is to get the launch ramp removed and the pilings driven. We have a bid from Art Anderson for all the engineering, design work, and bid document preparation for this for $52,590. I included a copy of the bid in your meeting packet and put it on the agenda for approval. I've also asked them for a recommendation of a firm for the geotechnical report about the soils where the pilings need to be driven. The bid we got from Envirotech was $6,800 and requires test borings in the water. Talked to Bill Ray about that because I believe that cost is a little bit out of line. He agreed and offered to talk to Envirotech. Also have the name of 2 other potential companies to get bids from if that doesn't work. Once the design work is finished, we can proceed with the Army Corps of Engineers permit. Once we have that, we can begin the demolition. We have until the end of February to get that done, but obviously it's not going to happen. So we have to wait until July. But aside from getting these things all ready to roll, we're in a holding pattern until we get the design work done and the Army Corps permit. Sweetwater Park, we have the final paperwork for the transfer in hand. However, there are a couple of issues of concern that came up on the title report that need to be resolved before we close on this. One concerns water rights and another an old easement. I emailed a copy of the report to all of you on December 31st and outlined our concerns. I also sent a copy to Dana Rosenbach. Joe Brogan believes all these issues can either be resolved or insured for, and he recommended we move forward with preparing for closing. However, the easement issue may require a survey to find exactly where that easement is located. Question is, who will pay for that? Also, it's customary for the seller to pay for title insurance, but the North Mason School District is balking on that. If we have to insure against the title issues, we'll have to pay the difference. We would normally have to pay the difference between standard title policy and an enhanced one. That cost is estimated to be just shy of $800, so we're standing still until these issues are resolved. The water rights things have been resolved since I wrote this. Two of the companies that had water rights are no longer in business. One of them hasn't been in business for 50 years. So there's just a lot of old stuff, and what Joe's doing is he's talking to the title company about getting those things off the title. So, staging area development, as you know, we closed on sale of the Ogren property on December 31st and are now the owners. Nothing new's happened on this since last month, other than I called Honduras and had it added to our insurance policy. I did cover the contents for $100,000, even though we're requiring the Ogrens to have renter's insurance. Considering what could happen, I felt the small amount to cover the contents was worth the extra protection. I mean, that was cheaper than being engaged in a lawsuit. The last thing we need would be for some disaster to occur and get sued. We've also discussed getting access for the required inspections and assessments with Ms. Ogren so we can move forward quickly once they've vacated the property. She's agreed to be cooperative. Hopefully we can begin demolition shortly after they move down. All ports meeting, we've contacted all the Mason County ports again last week and asked for some dates of work for everyone to have another Mason County all ports meeting. We're just waiting to hear back from everyone with dates to schedule this. I have heard from Duwato and Shelton about being interested, but no dates yet. Nothing from Hoodsport. The last Kitsap All Ports meeting was January 27th, which I was not able to attend. Transient Mortgage Expansion Project. This project is essentially complete. We do have some additional reimbursements to submit, and unless we can use the leftover grant funds for the fire system upgrade, that will close us out. I've submitted a scope of work amendment form to our grant manager at Commerce for this. She told me it would be an expansion of the scope of the grant, but since it was a code issue, there's a possibility we could. She told me to get costs, write it up for her, and submit. She'd see what she could do to help. We asked Art Anderson and Associates to work up an engineer's estimate so we'll at least have an idea of how much money we'll need, as well as get a clarification of exactly what we would need to do. They contacted the fire marshal, as in reviewing the code requirements, one question that would significantly impact costs is whether or not a sprinkler system is required for the dock. Art Anderson believes it's not required and stated several code sections dealing with this and followed up with a note to the fire marshal citing those codes. He said he would review them and get back in touch. What he did, I talked to them this morning, and they had finally heard from the fire inspector, and he says he will require sprinklers if we do anything else, and that would include increasing the fire flow to the dock itself. But they also said if they were gonna tap into the hydrant for fire flow, you know, if there was a fire down there, that there's more than enough pressure there to do that. So they weren't sure we really needed to do anything. Criminalization of marina rules, nothing new has happened, although Commissioner Jackson has a direction on how to proceed, but first we need to get the cameras in place, and that's my report.
Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome Thera Black from PRTPO for a presentation. Thank you.
Oh, sure.
While we're getting this set up, I
There
just
you
wanted to let you all know that I'm here tonight at the invitation of the board to talk with you about Peninsula RTPO, and I'm excited to talk to you all, but I have to tell you, in light of what we do, to have this many people in the room as a captive audience, I'm really delighted to get to talk to some people who I think is really new stuff for you. So what I'm going to do tonight is talk with you about Peninsula RTPO. I'm going to explain what all that means, but I'm going to give you a little bit of a bigger overview so you understand how it fits into that bigger picture. Let's see if this is going to work. Let's go. It is, and so what I'd like to do is start off by just giving you a sense of what is the state framework that this happens within. RTPO is an acronym for Regional Transportation Planning Organization. And we're going to talk about Regional and Transportation Planning Organization, all of that in there. And I'll just apologize to people for using acronyms, but once you say that whole phrase a few times, we can, like, the acronym makes a lot of sense. So RTPOs were created by the state as a part of that whole growth management process in 1990. It's under different legislation, but they came about at a time when the state was really worried about rampant growth, and that coordination between transportation and land use is really important to manage that, both in terms of having enough money to build a big enough infrastructure to accommodate all the growth, as well as growing in ways that transit and biking and walking are vital alternatives. So the state saw a role that created these RTPOs to help do a lot of coordination. So these are voluntary organizations. They don't have taxing authority. They're not going to come after your property. They don't build stuff like that. But what RTPOs do is they take a table like this and they bring all the members of the region around it, and then they collaborate and coordinate together on issues that they have in common. Now there's 16 RTPOs in Washington State, and the one that we're here to talk about tonight is the Peninsula, so the Olympic and Kitsap Peninsulas. But as you see up here, you know, there are various sizes and all across the state. They're made up in you know, different configurations. Some RTPOs are much larger than what the Peninsula region is. So anything that has a genuinely like metropolitan population associated with it has a federal designation that comes along as well. And I'm telling you this just because they're very, very similar, metropolitan planning organizations and regional transportation planning organizations, but they have some different authorities and they have different funding capacities. But it can be a little bit confusing sometimes when you, like, is this an RTPO or an MPO? So I just wanted to point that out to you, that they're similar, but they're different. And just because we're going to talk just a little bit about these MPOs. I just wanted to point out that there are 12 of those in the state. So some RTPOs are also MPOs, but not all MPOs are an RTPO. And so there are 12 federally recognized metropolitan planning organizations. The one that is of most relevance to you here in this room tonight is the Puget Sound Regional Council, which is this very large mass area there. So PSRC, or Puget Sound Regional Council, has jurisdiction over a lot of stuff that happens in Kitsap County because of Kitsap being so close to Belfair and the North Mason County. Those are some things, you know, just worth knowing about. But going back to our RTPO, what I'm going to really highlight here is that the region that we're talking about, Peninsula, is all of this, the Olympic Peninsula, plus this hatched area. This is Kitsap County, and this is Mason, Jefferson, and Fallon counties. It's a 4-county region, and we're going to come back and talk about that unusual hatching on Kitsap County here in just a second. The other thing that I wanted to share with you, so people are like, oh, RTPOs, what do? You bring people around a table, and then what? And the intent behind them when they were created by the legislature with that Growth Management Act legislation was that there would be this coordination level between local and regional. And so the PRTPO, the RTPOs, they have certain requirements to develop long-range plans and to deal with some funding issues. And that long-range plan sets a framework for the way that local jurisdictions develop their comprehensive plans. And I know this is going to sound circular, but at the same time, that regional plan needs to be consistent with. So it's not a top-down or even necessarily a bottom-up. It's the long-range plan influences the local plans, and then those local plans in turn influence the long-range plan. And that way we grow, say sort of like in harmony, if you would, over the years, because there is sort of a give and take. There's a big policy framework, but then there's the real-world nitty-gritty, down-in-the-dirt details that come with land development and infrastructure building and all of that. And then that in turn influences the long-range vision. So it's so on the local end, the locals are developing comprehensive plans and their 6-year TIPs, and they're developing annual budgets. On the regional end, we're developing long-range plans, a regional tip, and a work program that guides the work. And they're all related. This stuff provides input up here. This, from the regional, provides input to the local. And then the state sort of plays this role in the middle that it ties it all together. So I won't go into the details of it other than to say there is this very iterative relationship between regional and local planning. So if we talk about the Peninsula region specifically, there are 31 member jurisdictions. As I said, there's 4 counties, Mason, Jefferson, Allyn, and Kitsap. So the jurisdictions, the counties, the municipalities are members, as are ports. We have 4 ports: the Port of Allyn, the Port of Shelton, the Port of Bremerton, and the Port of Port Angeles are also members. And that's really unusual to have 4 port districts as a member of a regional planning organization. The other thing that's really unique, I think, about this region is that we have 9 tribes, and I know for a fact that there is not another region in Washington State or the United States with 9 tribal members to it. And so as we think going forward about this regional program, if we can find those areas of coordination where there's a shared interest between our tribal partners and our local government partners, and we can bring that together, we can move mountains. Because if you can get 9 tribes to agree on something, and then that's also in harmony with what the local jurisdictions want to do, it creates a lot of clout in terms of funding opportunity or even shaping some policy. So we're really interested in that. In terms of just the quick history and sort of like why I'm here, PRTPO was created in 1990, as I said, part of that legislation. But for its first 29 years, it was administered by the DOT. It was administered by Washtenaw Olympic Region out of Tumwater. And so for 29 years, PRTPO was basically administered by the state. It was the only one in the state that was done like that. No, everybody else was independent. And so a little over a year ago, DOT let the region know that it was no longer going to be taking care of it, no longer administering it. And so PRTPO thought through how it wanted to grow, how it wanted to manage itself. And starting July 1st, for the first time in almost 30 years, PRTPO is an independent entity able to sort of figure out for itself what is its policy direction, what does it mean to be strategic when you are a small rural region like this. So this was a really big deal that came about the 1st of July of this year. In terms of organizational structure, again, there's not a region like this in the state. There is no staff. I'm a consultant. The lead planning agency for the 4-county region is Kitsap Transit. And my contract is with Kitsap Transit. The lead fiscal agent who receives the state funds that pays for the work is Jefferson Transit. And then there's an executive committee made up of the chair, the vice chair, and the treasurer who sort of provide oversight to everything. And for me, when I see this, there's a part of me that goes like, that is a really crazy structure. But there's another part of me that says this is testament to the kind of deep-seated, long-running collaboration and partnerships that are evident in this region. I don't know of another region in the state that could have worked out this type of collaborative management, self-management arrangement that keeps their cost low. They only pay for me when I'm here. They don't have a full-time staff. So this is just a really unique structure and worth knowing, because if you go to look at our website, you'll see that it's hosted by Kitsap Transit. You might be going, wait, am I in the right place? You're in the right place. The other thing that I would point out about the organization, like most organizations, maybe larger, has it's got an executive board, so policymakers, senior staff members are on that, and that's the decision-making body. So if they're adopting a plan or a policy or making a funding decision, those decisions are made by the executive board. The Technical Advisory Committee, or TAC, makes recommendations to the board, and then that, like I said, that executive committee provides oversight. So a few things I think are really interesting about this region that I want to call out to you. First of all, I want to go back to this thing about Kitsap County. There are a lot of things unique about this region. One of them is that Kitsap County is the only county in the state that is in 2 different RTPOs. And this is a really unusual situation They are part of the Puget Sound Regional Council, so everything that goes on in Kitsap County, just over that border line there between Mason and Kitsap, has, I'm going to say like the heavy hand, or the PSRC has much more authority than what PRTPO has, and so Kitsap County really has to play by those specific rules. But Kitsap County is also part of PRTPO, and in my relationship now with PSRC, one of the things that we look at with Kitsap County is it's sort of like a gateway county. It connects the highly rural parts of Western Washington with the economic engine in the central Puget Sound. And so both in terms of commute, people who commute into that major metropolitan area for work and take their paychecks back home, or conversely, what I've heard a lot as I've been out and around on the peninsula is the importance of tourism, people coming from the cities to spend their money out in rural areas. So that is a really unique situation. The other thing, there are a couple of other things really unique about the region, like I said, the tribes, the ports, the transit agency, but also the federal lands presence with the Navy and its various bases and facilities in the region, as well as having Olympic National Park smack in the middle of our region, the National Forest, and a lot of state lands too, but in particular those federal lands. There is some funding that's available to local agencies who partner with federal lands like national parks or national forest that are not available to jurisdictions that don't have federal lands in their backyard. So we're going to learn more, we're going to make sure we're tapping that partnership and that relationship as much as possible. And then I do know that from the national park side of things, they like that kind of coordination because tourists are coming there from a long ways away. So having that coordination with the gateway communities is a really important thing. So I just wanted to point out that we do have some kind of unique characteristics here. So when we think about responsibilities, I won't go into tons of detail here. Each one of these pops up in their own ways, but one of the things that RTPO is required to do is to maintain a 20-year planning horizon. And so it's hard. We're best at planning a year out. Like that's when we have a pretty good idea of all the details that are going to affect a plan or a project or a process. 5 years out, we have to do a lot of that because that's just the way the money works. 20 years out, things start to get, you don't focus too much on the details because whatever I'm here to tell you about 20 years from now, it's wrong. That's all I can say. We're having a hard time staying abreast of what's happening 5 years from now. The pace of change is really, really accelerating. But despite that, it's really valuable to have a long-range plan so that all those individual local agencies, as I was saying earlier, that their plans are all sort of working together so that each jurisdiction can make its own independent decisions like it needs to, but as a regional community, we know that that all is adding up to a common future or a common direction. So that's probably the thing you most often hear us talking about in long-range planning circles. But there's also a transportation improvement program, or TIP, and that is sort of built up from the programs that are developed by each of the local jurisdictions. And then within that process, PRTPO also gets to allocate a little bit of federal funding. It's not much, it's about $215,000 a year, which, as they say, it's better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick, but it's not really a lot of money, but that's okay. We'll make the most of it as we can. And then something called the Unified Planning Work Program, which governs the work that we do on a year-by-year basis so that we can say to you, the public and policymakers, this is what we want to accomplish over time, and this next year and the year after moves us more steps in that direction. There are a few other things that a PRTPO will do that you may run into us every so often in the community. We talk about system performance, and I will say that when they wrote the legislation, they were very urban-centric in their thinking, and they're thinking system performance means congestion relief. And if you're in Seattle or Bellevue, yes, it means congestion relief. But system performance, when, say, like in Allyn, it might be lowering the speed limit, making sure the speed limit on SR3 through town is, that people adhere to that speed limit, that they're not speeding, because that is system performance. Can you walk, safely? Can you cross the street safely? Do you have a resilient system? Does your system Does the road wash out regularly? Those are all ways of thinking about system performance. Human services transportation, that's things like this sort of social safety net that makes sure that nobody is stranded. And so helping to coordinate that and identify those projects that go forward. A lot of working with nonprofit organizations. We do a lot of outreach and engagement, or we are going to be doing more of that, and opportunities like this to captive audience always helps on that. And then again, that consistency, that coordination between local and regional planning is an important function. And so then I'm thinking like, okay, I'm here tonight talking with you all at the Port of Allyn. And so we're thinking like, okay, so what is transportation, port, how does that all come together? I'll say that economic vitality is one of 6 statewide transportation goals. Transportation is vitally important for economic vitality. And so I come tonight with that at the forefront of my thinking about port interest. And so we're talking everything freight access and, you know, how, again, does the system, does SR3 continually clog up in Belfair, or do we have an alternate route so that people have more than one way to get through, and that enhances reliability? It's how do you have, can your workforce get to your place of business if you are an employer, or as an employee, do you have travel options for where you're going to get to at work? Ingress, egress, you know, if you can't pull into or out of businesses, it's hard to do business. And I know that ports are in the business of attracting and retaining, you know, new industries to come into town. And so, and then that's part of achieving this jobs housing balance, so that people don't have to travel long ways to go to work, that maybe we can have jobs and housing closer and grow the tax base that supports the services. So that's pretty much my quick high-level overview, and what I would love to do is answer any questions, and then also ask you as port commissioners, how transportation, my learning curve is vertical right now. I'm still getting to know everybody, all the region's partners, and I would love to know how transportation might influence the decisions that you all make, and if you ever run into things where transportation ends up being a barrier or an inhibitor to what you want to do. So that's the end of my presentation. I'd happily entertain questions, but I'd also love to pick your brain a little bit on that.
Well, I think transportation influences people's lives because we don't want to leave town at between 5 and 7 p.m. So we don't want to get stuck in traffic.
And is it about a 2-hour window through here?
And I don't know what was going on last Friday, but it was backed up past, I had to leave town, but it was backed up past the airport. Just a bit Friday traffic.
So that new corridor coming in is, you think it's going to help relieve that? We're hopeful.
Hopeful.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
It also affects, for the port, where we want to grow, what infrastructure we want to build. A lot of the places that we're looking up is up at the north end of Belfair.
Yeah.
And is it really, can we really justify building someplace that we want to employ people, where people need to go when they're fighting traffic for a 4-mile drive that takes them 15, 20 minutes to get there? Hopefully the freight corridor does something to improve that, but so for a port, the decision making, because right now going through Belfair at certain times is unrealistic. So.
And does that, have you run into issues where you wanted to, maybe you had somebody on the line, somebody who was thinking about locating in Belfair, but the traffic became an issue and they just said, not till you get this straightened out? Is that, have you run into that yet? That it's
I haven't heard that firsthand.
Okay,
maybe
good.
Judy or you two that have been on the port for a while. But I haven't heard it firsthand.
Okay.
But there's a lot of valuable property up there that
Sure
isn't
is.
selling as quickly as I think it thought it would. So, but yeah, I haven't heard that firsthand,
Okay.
that a business wants
Yeah.
to locate here because of traffic.
That's good. I'm glad, just because that project has been in the pipeline for so long, and it'd really be unfortunate if we'd lost it just because it hadn't moved yet.
Or is the infrastructure really water, sewer? that's part of it, but
Yeah.
again, the traffic is, does back up quite a bit.
Yeah, it does.
One of the things too, I've been on the PRTPO for many years, and, PRTPO has had the ability to do planning grants. And actually, that's why I thought it was really important that you come and speak, is that, we are really small, but there are some things little small things that we could do with the right planning monies to change, like sidewalks in Allyn. And WashDOT is going to deal with Highway 300, which, that's a danger, that's scary. And then also the trails, trail system is also part of that. We have a trail system that is in the works, or at least we hope so, that I think can take traffic or foot traffic at least off of Highway 300. Again, there's been a few lives lost because there's nowhere to walk and it's dangerous. So I think this has been such a valuable organization that I don't think we really have understood or utilized. And I'm really glad that you're here to explain. You've been awesome.
Well, if it's not apparent, I just find this regional level of collaboration really fascinating, and I feel like the region is stronger than than the sum of all the individual parts. And so, a question I have for you all, if it's okay to keep, because so we have ports, and it struck me. I heard you saying in the back that you're organizing an all Mason County ports meeting. So, do ports in Mason County, do you each have sort of like your own sort of niche? Is there competition among the ports, or are there some things that are really logical things that all ports benefit from? I don't know. I don't have a lot of experience working directly with ports.
That's where you started. We're really unique. I mean, we all are diverse.
Yeah.
So
that's actually good. So you're not like just competing and stealing business from each other, but you're growing. Collectively, you're growing with business. That's great. This will be something, as we go forward, whether it's a freight mobility study, planning grants to figure out bicycle, pedestrian, sidewalk improvements. The one thing I will say for funding, if you've got a project, especially like an infrastructure project that you want to fund, if you can break it up in incremental bite-sized chunks, so first you get your planning grant, and then that allows you to come up with some reasonable alternatives, engage the community, come up with a preferred alternative, and have a real cost estimate, or as close to a real as you can. Then you can go get the funding to do the design. Still not at the construction phase, but every time you take another step, you have a project that's more construction ready, and at that point it becomes more and more competitive. So in the 28 years I've been doing transportation work, the one thing that just constantly amazes me, and I don't think that many people in the public understand this, is that for something as vitally important as transportation is to everything we do, I mean everything. It's not just transportation, it underpins schools and jobs and economic vitality and emergency access and community livability, go on and on. It is funded in the most haphazard way, and it's not the local jurisdiction's fault, and it's not the state agent DOT's fault. It's just the way the money works is so bizarre and so competitive. And so what it does is it pits local jurisdictions against each other to try to get funding for things that it's like, this is just basic, like if you don't take care of this, it's going to deteriorate and it's going to cost even more to replace it. And so it's just this, I think the general public just assumes there's normal, regular funding that flows through on this, but a surprisingly large amount of the funding is competitively awarded, or it's either competing against another jurisdiction, or even within the same jurisdiction. Does this go to law enforcement? We've only got this much money. Do we put it in law enforcement or pavement preservation? And I don't envy any of these jurisdictions the decisions they have to make, but it is a pretty dysfunctional way to pay for something that is so essential to everything we do, and we take it for granted. And it starts at the federal level, and but it is, if we can think about how to approach the funding strategically, there are ways of getting at it.
Well, does anybody have any questions or comments for Thera? Yes, ma'am.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I was in that mess Friday night. You know, and this is gonna sound really counterproductive, but the stoplight there at Taco Bell, if they had a no right turn on red, they use that as a merge lane. And instead of buzzing up there and they've got 5 cars in line, you've got 100 cars this way. And every time they keep merging them like it's a merge lane, and that just backs traffic tremendously.
So help me understand, so we're coming southbound on SR3, right?
Yes.
And then and you're at that light, and so you're saying, don't allow right on red there.
Correct. I had a truck almost run over me, and I just would not give because I had green light. And he just nearly pushed me into the other lane. He didn't hit because I just didn't spot. But they will force themselves in, and it's like a merge lane. So they come around Highway 300, and you see it. There's
Oh,
not
I
that
see. I
many
know what
backed
you're,
up.
okay.
They keep theirs going. And the ones up the hill just back farther and farther and farther. So I know that is a factor.
Yeah, that signal, that intersection has had some problems. I see they put the little barriers up so you can't turn into the Taco Bell there, and that's good, because I knew that was, people would turn right, and then they would stop and wait until they could turn into the Taco Bell. It was like, that's bad.
Yeah, and that little road was a county road, actually.
Yeah.
So it was the county that did that.
Yeah.
There, if I might follow up on what Bonnie said, the folks do the same thing coming down the hill into Belfair. There at the Starbucks, they'll merge over to the left instead of turning right on the right only. They'll merge into the left.
Just trying to get ahead a bit.
Yeah, just try to get ahead of the person that's going as fast as they are. Zero. I really don't hold a lot of faith that the freight corridor is going to relieve much congestion in downtown Belfair because that 4-way intersection at the Old Belfair Highway is been paying for quite some time.
And that traffic is not going to be influenced by
Yeah.
that. You know, that's.
That backup will continue even with the freight corridor.
Yeah, that's a problem intersection right there too.
Yes.
Now, I'm not sure if this is true, but I have heard that there is a possibility of Amazon building a big distribution center up by the airport. What is that going to do to our already horrific traffic coming and going? Because for the most part, us people here in Allyn and Belfair, we have one main way out and one main way in. Otherwise, taking big, long loops, you know, out, going down towards Olympia to get back up to, you know, Tacoma and whatnot. So if it's true that something like that is going to be built, I don't even know if the freight corridor would help that. Because that's going to bring a lot of jobs and a lot more traffic.
It is. One of the things I find interesting, so I got to do some work up in Belfair looking at that corridor and how that area was growing, and I haven't heard about the distribution center. I will say that if it's a really big distribution facility, there will be mitigation, and it might provide funding to mitigate some things that there would not be otherwise be funding to mitigate. So I think that that's a possibility as long as there's, you know, everybody stays aware of what's going on and gets involved in the process, and I'm sure something of that magnitude would have pretty good notification. The other thing that jumped out at me when I was looking at the traffic data this a couple of years ago is the importance of Lake Flora Road to North Mason and South Kitsap there, you know, the Bremerton area. Lake Flora, like SR3, you're not going to put much more traffic on SR3. It's not, SR3 is not going to be widened its length, and so so it's right now it's about trying to figure out how to make the traffic that's on there operate better, make the corridor operate better. But future growth, I mean, it is. Belfair is closer. It is closer to Port Orchard via Lake Flora, and then that Highway 16. Interchange than it is to Bremerton, and so I think in the future we're going to see more, and certainly with the truckers. The north there's an intermodal freight transfer facility in North Mason. You've got wonderful, wonderful folks who are operating it. They're bringing more and more business coming over to the Tacoma Narrows, coming out 16 and taking Lake Florida to there, because the traffic in Port of Tacoma and Port of Seattle is so bad. So I think as the central Puget Sound I-5 corridor grows, that might be, if somebody is thinking about a big distribution center, that might be what's driving that thinking. And then that connection, that Lake Flora Highway 16 connection is going to be really important.
That Lake Flora right now.
It'll have to be upgraded.
Something has to happen there because there are so many wrecks there.
Well, and that's a bad intersection. I know the state really wanted to try to solve that intersection with the Belfair Bypass Freight Corridor project, and that's not going to work out for them on this project. But that is a bad intersection.
Years ago, it was on the plan, it's been on there for many, many years, to cut from Purdy on over and come in the back to Polk Ranch. Is that still in the planning stages, or?
I know
schedule?
nothing about that. I know nothing about that. I do know a lot of that area back here is really environmentally challenged. So I don't know how I know they do worry, just even like the Purdy, the bridge and that whole 302 corridor is just, it's so environmentally constrained. So there may well be something that works.
Yeah, there was, because I was on a committee for it, and they were going north of this bit.
Okay, interesting.
And maybe leaving the Purdy Bridge
Yeah.
here, but cutting north, coming across there and across the peninsula and
Yeah.
talking to the back of Fort Bremerton or Lake Florida.
Interesting. Yeah. One of the things that's so important as that area develops, I mean, it's going to develop. That is, what will happen over time, or big chunks of it, is that whoever's thinking through the transportation, that we start to try to put a bit of a grid in so that we're not just putting everything onto one road, because we see what happens with SR3. And so if that is happening and that puts another piece of that grid in, that could be good, but I don't know that area at all.
Anybody else? Look, there, we can't thank you enough.
Oh,
We
this
really
is
appreciate
wonderful.
it.
So much.
Yeah, and I'll just leave, I didn't bring enough for everybody here, but I've got a few, it's like a little leave behind. I'll say this is PRTPO's first general public meeting, so thank you for the
Thank you.
honor of getting that to be here and share those.
Great.
Yeah, and maybe we'll have a chance to
Thank you.
get you some funding on something.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is the public hearing on update to the 2020 comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements. There was discussion today whether or not proper public notice was disseminated and that people heard about it. Our office manager, Leanne, did send it out. Whether the newspaper published it, we can't verify that. I'm going to ask the commissioners whether or not we want to table this for the next meeting, which we have scheduled for February 10th, next Monday, and we'll get that notice out. I did go through the Public Notification Act real briefly. I didn't see, since this is just a review and update of the comprehensive scheme, where that public notice was necessary. But I don't, if people weren't notified through the normal channels, I don't want the opportunity denied to them. So, commissioners, do you want to move forward with this tonight, or do we want to pend it for the 10th? And ask our office manager to send out the notice again.
I'm good for the 10th, if that's all right with everybody.
All right, so we're going to table item B. Okay, I want a motion. All
I
in
move
fa-
that we table the public hearing for the update to the 2020 comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes, ma'am.
I think one of the main reasons that these things are difficult is you make the required announcements. But like the North Bay Review would hit a lot of people in Allyn that probably don't even get the paper. And that's always been a problem. And I don't know how you do it in Belfair. They've got that new little one, but something local like that, people are more likely to see it.
And
I
I
know
believe-
they're interested. I know they're interested.
Yeah, there was a comment right before the meeting started that somebody did see it in the North Bay Review.
Yes.
I have, we tried to find a copy, but we couldn't find it up in the office. I still believe I have one at home, I'll look. But if we're paying for the Shelton Journal to publish our public notices, and they should be published, so, or we should be paying them. So, anyways, we'll table this to the 10th. On that note, there is a survey that we asked for public comment on anything regarding the comprehensive scheme or what you'd like to see done by the port. I'd suggest if you haven't looked at the survey information, go on the port website and provide your input. That'd be greatly appreciated. And for those that already have, thank you. So,
Yeah, there's a button on the website that takes you directly to the survey.
So just to let everybody know, we'll be going over the comprehensive scheme on the 10th, next Monday at 6 o'clock. We'll start.
Will that be our only public hearing?
I believe so, isn't it?
Unless you all want to schedule another one.
No, I would, yes, sir.
Just wanted to ask, Mr. I got a copy of the comprehensive plan this morning and looked through it. And I have several questions. And when you do have the public hearing, would you give a overview and take questions before you actually have the public hearing portion?
Absolutely. The executive director has a PowerPoint ready to go.
And would it be possible to have a copy of the survey results?
They haven't been tabulated yet. I looked at the results on Friday, and they're kind of a mixed bag, but for the most part, there was only 5 questions in the survey. How do you feel about each project, and would you put it in your priority order? Most of them were either in the priority order that we have them, or they moved 1 or 2 up or down. That was it. There was only one that suggested deleting one project. And the questions on how do we fund things, they were almost unanimous about, don't raise our taxes, go find grants. State money. So,
Okay.
but I haven't officially tabulated all of the stuff. I've been out the last few days.
Sure, I understand. I think it'd be beneficial if the public could see what those results were.
Well, we did that the last time. I mean, I had intended to do it.
Okay,
So I just wasn't able to do it
Yeah.
for this meeting.
thank you.
All right. Item C, discussion of update to policies and procedures.
Yeah, I just wanted to be sure you all wanted to go forward with that. We talked about it, but there was never a definitive decision. If you do, I'm on it. If you want to wait, I'm not. So,
Yeah, we definitely have it.
I believe we should as well.
Yep. All right. Request for a date change for the mid-year review and update to the 2020 budget.
Right. I just would like to move it back a month. We originally were going to have it for the review in May and make a decision in June. I'd like to have the review in June to where we've got a full 6 month in and do it, approve it at the July meeting.
I'm good with that.
And we'll have a better handle on, what we're spending money on and what we're not.
Yeah, I agree with those dates. And have you heard anything on the timber tax?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, just for the audience's gratification here. In 2018, we got $77,000 in timber tax, and in 2019, we got 0. So, kind of wondering why. What we're being told is it depends on the amount of timber that's been cut, and who gets what chunks of it, and we're not at the top of the priority list for that money. So we're about in the middle somewhere.
All right, then we go down to approval to $52,590 contract with Art Anderson and Associates regarding the Oyster House engineering.
Yeah, that's for the engineering and design of the platform that the house is going to sit on. for what pilings have to be driven, where they have to be driven, and design for everything, and preparation of bid documents.
Need a motion?
Yes, that needs a motion.
Okay, I
Yes.
move that we accept the contract of $52,590 with Art Anderson and Associates.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. I would open it up to public comment. Yes, sir. Come on.
Probably go to-
It'd be, since it's being recorded and the mic's up there, that'd be great.
My name's Barry Betzinger. I met Ted just a few days ago in the barber shop. That was nice. But we just moved very close here from Lakeland Village, and we've known of this problem for years. It probably has come up, but I want to reiterate it and what we've experienced. First of all, I want to congratulate the port on the great upgrades that you've done to the dock, and the upgrades that you're going to do for the new parking area and things like that. I mean, that's really super. I really like to see that. And the other things you're doing, I'm sure are, benefiting the community as well as others. And the Oyster House, it'll get placed eventually, and we hope there's going to be a lot of visitors there. The problem that I'm going to talk about is exiting Drum Street onto Highway 3, and not only during the summertime, but if you're going either right or left, with the parking the way it is along Highway 3 in front of the little church all the way back to probably that little coffee stand across from the gas station, you cannot see what's coming. And to try and look beyond that and try and guess, okay, how far are they apart there? How far apart are they going to be when I pull out of this street? Now, with the car, we just kind of, push the gas pedal down pretty well to get out into traffic going either way. But it's going to exacerbate when you're pulling a trailer, because it is a fairly steep hill. Unless you're in four-wheel drive and it's wet, you could spin your tires and that slows your way down. It's just been a problem seeing in that direction, even for good eyes, I'm sure. You just can't feel safe when you're pulling out. So one of the things, and I wish Thera were still here, because it kind of goes along with the planning that I know that she's doing. But she talked about speed limit, or Judy talked about speed limit and sidewalks. That's a possibility to combine the two things to make it safer to pull out. The reduction in speed limit, of course, would hinder flow through Allyn if we were to drop it to 25 miles an hour. But in 25 miles an hour, if you pull out in front of somebody because you can't see somebody coming, it allows them much more opportunity to stop or come to a very slow speed. And I'm not an opponent of low speed limits by any means, but I think it's a safety risk that you ought to consider. So that's just my comment.
Thank you very much.
I will completely agree with you. Somebody who uses that on a daily basis is a very dangerous spot.
I've actually opted to go to Tuama and launch over there because we can't get everybody out of here. But our trailer's so long, we have to swing into the other lane, whichever way you go. Crossing traffic, so it's hard to use it.
Mike?
Ditto, you go, go flying out there. Following up on that, actually, there's a lot going on up by Wheelwright Street here in Allyn, and there's a lot of talk about a roundabout here, oval about, I think they called it.
And I think Larry has been involved in those meetings, but I think it's the port. Port should really be involved. I don't know how much you are so far. But like Larry said, there's 9 houses going in up, right directly up. And then another 15 are asking for water on the other side. That affects transportation. Judy and I went down to the county one time. We had a measure in that one little section that wasn't open. And they talked then about opening it up. It was a very minor matter to open it up. So I'm hoping that the port is encouraging them to do that so that there'll be appropriate roads and stuff people can get around in Allyn. Because this corner down here is extremely dangerous. If any of you have tried to turn there, you slow down to turn, and about the time you slow down, somebody comes barreling behind you. And I've missed a few. Anyway, the other part is Sargent Building. Sorry, I didn't report last month. We have 1 signature left, and it's amazing how long state contracts take. We got the $40,000 committed from Olympia Oyster. We committed clear back in December, but we still need 1 more signature before we can actually sign the state contract, which is, it's just maddening. But we have all of our ducks lined up now. I'm meeting with Toby Johnson and Nick from Nickel Brothers this week, in fact tomorrow, and we should be able to sign the contract and get that going. Toby says within 4 weeks. So, yeah. Is there any chance that Don could take a ladder out there and fix that tie duct before it completely flies away?
Well, I talked to my guys, and we can probably get them to come out and do it,
That
because we
would be
put it
great.
up, so.
Yeah, just tack it back up until
Yeah.
Toby can get involved in it. But yeah, it's
So when is
finally.
Toby gonna start? Do you know? Is he on
Well,
another
it
job?
depends on Nickel Brothers, and I got hold of Nickel Brothers and I put the 2 together, and I haven't heard what their timing is, but it'll take 3 or 4 weeks for Toby to get all of the lumber and everything ordered and get it in there, and then he'll coordinate with when Nickel Brothers can actually do the lifting of the building. And Toby has come up with a different way to stabilize the building during the lifting process, which I think is really, really good. It's, I think it's going to be much sturdier than what we had talked about before. Instead of just running them down and doing a brace, he's doing a lot of cross bracing too. And he's been in there, and we've talked a lot about removing the fireplace and putting back a face, just so it looks
Original.
appropriate. Yeah, that it won't be used, but he's going to dismantle that and put it back in. The same with the stairs; they'll look the same, but they'll be sturdy. So I'm very excited about it. Finally going to get something going. Finally, and just for the record, we've been involved in this since 2011.
Yeah.
I was thinking I was going to die before it was over. I still may. We had to sign a contract for 13 more years. I'm 77 now, so that you do the math. So we'll do it though. We'll be here. We'll get it all done. That's just to run the building. That's not to get it done. Anyway.
Thank you very much.
And thank these 2 guys, they're tremendous members of the
Yes.
committee that have
Thank
been
you.
supporting it all the way along the way. So.
Right.
I didn't come prepared for this, but I'm reading on this. Drum Street is the one that comes down to the dock. That street is still open, clear up. It would be fairly easily matter to bring it down to Highway 3 from the west side. There's some sort of control light, street light, stop light, whatever. And you could have a lot more traffic control in town. And the port's in a position to spark that because you're a primary occupant of Drum Street. So far as my research shows so far, that whole right of way is still open, as opposed to many other streets in Allyn that have been picked apart over the years. That one's still there.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Yes, sir.
Commissioners, thank you. The meeting that you'll have next week is the 10th, correct? And that's a special meeting, so I think you do have to put public notice at the Journal about that, and I might want to look into that because they told me today when I was there that they hadn't received anything for quite some time, so there's a foul sign. I don't know how long you have to advertise it before they'll put it in there. But the main reason I was down in Shelton today was I was over at a county commissioner briefing, and Mr. Carey was there. And they were talking about planned action environmental impact statement for the Belfair UGA. And part of that is updating the sub-area plan, something that I've been asking for a long time. It was adopted in 2004. The Port of Allyn and Mrs. Knight were heavily involved in that, as well as myself and quite a few other community members. So I was really quite surprised to hear about it. But an EIS is a rather substantial thing, and I've noticed that several of the projects on your comprehensive plan are in that Belfair urban growth area. So I'd just suggest that you be cautious about, or figure out what the county's actually planning to do. They were talking about first they were talking about doing the entire UGA, and then they said no, we just want to do a part of it. But it really does a disservice, I think, to just do part of it and only focus on one area. They were confused about where the critical aquifer recharge area was versus the wellhead protection areas. So there's a whole lot of education on everybody's part about what this is going to entail. So,
Do you know what initiated this?
I have no idea, but they seem to be real intense about doing it as quick as they possibly can.
Okay.
But I know that their staff told them that it could be as much as, it takes a while to scope for a EIS. It could be 18 months, 2 years. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know about that. They're having another briefing next Monday, and then it's on the consent agenda to initiate the progress on Tuesday of next week. So just wanted to let you know.
Yes.
Just one comment on that. I've had contact with planning for quite a few months on a certain issue, and she basically told me several months ago that they were going to look at both the Belfair and Allyn UGA for problems and try and get things straightened out a little bit better, but that they needed to start on Belfair first because it was worse than Allyn UGA is in terms of current usage and things like that. So anyway, I know they're working on Belfair first and try and get that straightened out.
Does that mean they're going to update the Allyn comprehensive plan?
Someday after Belfair.
Okay.
Is there any other comments? Well, one, thank you very much. This is the largest attended meeting we've had in a while, but thank you for being here. I just want to, for the good of the order real quick, is there's a couple of House bills and one Senate companion bill that for our area I think takes notice, and I want to thank Commissioner Scott for bringing it up. It's one's a recreational shooting on Department of Natural Resources land. There's a bill being co-sponsored by Dan Griffey to make sure there is recreational shooting allowed on DNR property. As most of you know, I've been in law enforcement and worked in the woods a lot, and you were always allowed to shoot on DNR property, but DNR is coming back. I understand why, the dumping, the shell casings, everything else, and then the biggest concern is safety. But that's a bill that's in the hopper. And the other one is the prevention of derelict vessels and removal. And maybe the executive director correct me, but I think this is our second in 3 months that's listed sunk vessel that need to be removed.
Well, the scamper was removed, and it had been listing and got pumped out, listed and pumped out. But it finally got removed, but it, you know, we started that process, what, a year ago? And it took that long. And this one, it sat out there and was fine. And then all of a sudden, one day, it just started taking on water. So, you know, it was real heavy rain, plus it was taking on water from, you know, the bottom side. I mean, it sunk in, I don't know, 5, 6 hours.
And we all know how soft that mud is.
Yeah.
And it's just gonna start engulfing that thing, so.
You know, what we're concerned about is the oyster scows coming back and forth here, because at high tide, you can't tell where the bow is sticking up, and at high tide, you can't tell where it is. And we had asked if somebody would put a buoy or something on there so we could tell. Oh, is there? Okay.
It's pretty tough to see that.
Yeah.
Because we've sat out the parking lot and you've been trying to tell me there's something blue in the water, but
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, life jacket.
The heavy rains that we had leading up to it started the process. But then, as I was talking to Donnie, there was a hole in the hull in the back, and it just got to the point where the water started coming in there. But the bow being up in the air just before it really went further down, the bow raised a little bit, and so we could see the bow for quite a few days when the tide was out. Now it is completely gone, even on a lower tide, at least currently. It's pretty well down. I think it's totally sunk, and there's no air left in the bow anymore. So I think that's the only thing that was holding it up.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I've got something. About the Amazon, you mentioned, I think, is that gonna be on port property?
It has, a final location hasn't been determined yet,
Okay.
but it's either gonna be on port property over there by Defiance Marine,
Okay,
or it may be on Overton property.
okay.
It is Amazon, they're 99% sure. Amazon has filed, the plans were filed by a developer, but it's a developer that's done a number of other Amazon buildings, and the plans are identical to the Amazon buildings they've done.
I know there's survey stakes on there.
Yeah.
We pulled them last week. With the rendering facility.
Kind of overlapping onto Google Maps. It's a pretty big.
It's all surveyed out.
Yeah, it's supposed to employ 200 people.
Yeah, there's, I think, a little over 300 parking stalls in the rendering.
Go ahead, Dan, then I'll go ahead and share it if
Well,
that's okay.
the other thing I know on Highway 3, between Lake Florida and the airport, is a friend of mine just sold their property to the Indians, and they're saying they're putting a casino in there.
Is that the clearing?
Pardon?
Is that where all the trees were just cleared off in the past few weeks?
That's gonna be a roundabout.
It's got the
No.
roundabout.
That's where the
Oh, that's where the
roundabout.
roundabout.
Oh, do you mean on the Port of Bremerton property with all those
Yes.
clears were, yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's.
No, that's gonna be
That's
an
a big
industrial
racetrack?
building.
Building.
Yeah.
Where does the racetrack fit into all that?
Oh, I have no idea.
It's still,
It's going across the road, as far as I know.
Well, what I was gonna say is that North Mason Community Voice, which is the last Monday of this month, Jim Rothland from the Port of Bremerton is gonna be our speaker. And hopefully he can shed some light on some of those building projects. So be there, and that's at the Hub, 7 o'clock. So hopefully he can answer some of those questions. And again, maybe if Amazon's gonna be on the Port of Bremerton, it'd be nice to know.
Yeah.
And also, I don't usually plug books, but all of the proceeds for this book, Betty Kruger, her and her husband Les, he passed away a few years ago, used to own many convalescent centers around Kitsap County. And she wrote a book, and all the proceeds is gonna go to the Hub. So, and these books are available at the Hub. It's good reading. It's a good story, some history. They've been around here. She was around here since, gosh, her grandfather was here in the 1800s. Well, that's all I have.
Thank you. So, well, there's nothing else, we'll be adjourned. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
And we're adjourned. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, thanks for coming.